From the station working for you, this is Good Morning Indiana, streaming now.
Good morning on this Friday. I'm Rafael Sanchez. My good friend Lauren Casey is taking a day off. She'll be back on Monday. But this morning we'll have the latest COVID-19 numbers and details about a home explosion in northern Indiana. That's a developing story this morning. Plus, a consumer warning from WRTV investigates involving flooded damaged vehicles now popping up in many states. Indiana now ranks 14th in the nation when it comes to the number of flood damaged vehicles on the road, with more than 10,000. We'll have more on what you need to know coming up right here on this Friday morning. But first, let's check on your forecast on this Friday, which always happens to be a payday here at WRTV, Todd. So it's going to be a great day.
It's already a great day, right? With direct deposit, Rafael, the money's already there. And temperatures this morning are in the 60s and the 70s. So temperature's not the issue here this morning. It's fairly comfortable out there. And the issue, once again, is going to be some patchy fog here this morning. Nothing like yesterday, so you can't really compare the 2 days. But what we do have is the low overhanging clouds that are still present. And just like yesterday, it's going to take a while to thin these clouds out and get us into some sunshine. In fact, I'm not sure northern locations you'll see much in the way of sunshine at all here throughout the day today. It's southern locations, once again, that'll have the better opportunity to pick up a little bit of clearing here and there as a result of the cloud cover. Temperatures a little on the cooler side once again in the upper 70s. It'll feel a little damp and a little muggy out there as well if you go to work out. But we're not expecting any rain today. That changes heading into the weekend. More on that coming up in just a few minutes.
Todd, thank you so much. This is a solemn day in our country. September 11th marks 19 years since the terrorist attacks that hit New York City, Pennsylvania, and the Pentagon. To remember that day, Peter Gray and his classmates at Park Tudor did all of this. They placed nearly 3,000 flags in front of their school. This hometown memorial honors the victims of 9/11 on this September the 11th. And this young lady, she saw a need and reached out for her cell phone and a park bench. I'll take you to Johnson County to meet a young woman looking for a solution for those having a hard time with this pandemic. Her efforts to make a difference coming up in our 6 a.m. hour. We're just getting...
From the station working for you, this is Good Morning Indiana, streaming now.
Concerns with police reforms. Now at 4:30, WRTV Investigates takes a look at why State Training Board is now questioning the changes made by IMPD to improve accountability. New efforts to combat COVID-19. The people coming together to address the rising health concern and their message of unity. And a day we will never forget. It's been 19 years since the 2001 terrorist attacks. We'll take a look at what's being done to honor all those on this solemn day. Welcome to Good Morning Indiana on this Friday. I'm Rafael Sanchez. My good friend Lauren Casey will be back on Monday, but my other good friend is in the box next door as we continue to social distance. Todd, good morning. It's going to be a great Friday.
Yeah, Friday's always a good day, right, Rafael? No matter what. And we're starting off pretty calm out there this morning. A little bit of patchy fog. You remember yesterday this map had a lot of gray on it. A lot of the numbers were down below 1 mile visibility. We have some reduced visibility here in Muncie on the eastern side of central Indiana as you work your way from Newcastle up into the Muncie area. And then there's a little bit of lower visibility up here towards the Frankfort area, but that's it. I'll keep a look at these numbers for you, an eye on these numbers for you as we go throughout the course of the morning. But as you look to the north, yesterday we had the dense fog, right? The fog is a cloud on the ground, and we had the clear skies above that. Well, you can see the clouds are still suspended here this morning. So we're definitely starting off mostly cloudy, but we don't have any rain in the forecast for the day today. Eventually, some of these showers off to our west will get in here during the day tomorrow. 65 as the temperature as you make your way into the Muncie area, 70 in Bloomington throughout the day today. The clouds hang pretty tough. We're looking at partly to mostly cloudy skies. Temperatures in the 60s this morning. Eventually, by the noon hour, Rafael, getting up to right around 70 degrees.
It's looking good on this Friday as we take a live look outside to look at your traffic. This morning, we're taking a live look on the city's east side, I-70 at Post Road. As you can see, most people are still sleeping, which is okay, because if it were up to Todd and I, we would still be in bed. But we have to work this morning. Traffic at this point looking great throughout Indiana's interstate system. In the news this morning, multiple people, including a 3-year-old girl, recovering after an explosion leveled a home in northwest Indiana. This happened at a home in Porter near the Indiana Dunes Thursday afternoon. Porter Fire Chief Jay Craig says crews found people trapped inside the home and a large fire at the rear of the building when they arrived. The 3-year-old was trapped under debris, we're told. She was airlifted to a hospital in Chicago. The extent of her injuries are not known. Crews also rescued a woman trapped by fiery debris. A total of 7 people were injured in that fire. This morning, the cause of the explosion remains under investigation. Only on RTV6, the state's top police training board is calling into question recent police reforms done by Metro Police. WRTV Investigates takes a look at these concerns and the deadline that IMPD is now facing. Following months of protests sparked by police shootings around the country, including 2 in the city in May, the city of Indianapolis stepped up its police department reforms. By November, all Metro Police officers will wear body-worn cameras, and all officers are now working under 2 new general orders. General Order 130, which calls for IMPD to de-escalate encounters and puts in writing what was already not allowed: no chokeholds. Order 132 spells out the use of tasers and chemical sprays. Both orders now under the microscope of the Law Enforcement Training Board. The group, representing law enforcement statewide, says it has the obligation to review training practices before they are taught. In a letter to the Metro Police Chief and the Mayor of Indianapolis, the board raises concerns, saying it was led to believe that training on the new orders would not begin until 2021, though it learned that about half of Metro's officers have already undergone training. The board is also raising questions about the overall use of force policy. The group is concerned that the orders violate federal case law by limiting officers and putting them in harm's way. While the Law Enforcement Training Board unanimously opposes the teaching of the chokehold technique to law enforcement, it supports any tactic that may include a chokehold or neck restraint in a deadly force encounter. And so this remains a developing story this morning. State Police Superintendent Doug Carter chairs the Law Enforcement Training Board. He tells WRTV Investigates that he will comment on this matter after receiving a response from Metro Police and the city. Now, the city has 14 days to respond to the board. This morning, IMPD Deputy Chief Kendall Adams is pushing back on their concerns.
I think our policy meets that basic constitutional and state law requirement. It's very clear to us that the policy is within both those realms. We feel very confident about that.
We have the city's response and all the details on this developing story right now on our website, WRTV.com. Indianapolis is set to have a record year for homicide. So here's a closer look at the rising numbers.
Crime is continually falling in the country, and it's going to fall in 2020, but murder is up, and that's a very specific problem.
Asher, the co-founder of crime data consulting organization, he tells WRTV there's no clear answer, which unfortunately means there's no clear solution. So far this year, the city is at 130 criminal homicides. If the current pace continues, there will be around 195 by the end of the year. A 16-year-old Nia Cope was one of the victims killed in Indianapolis this year. Her mother says they were driving through the city when a stray bullet hit her daughter.
I got to my shooting, and before I knew it, a bullet had went, through my car and hit Nia. I'm not the only person that suffers this. A lot of people are suffering.
That shooting, it happened back in May. There have been no arrests in that case. For more on the recent surge in violence in Indianapolis, how it compares to years past, what police are doing right now to fight it, plus overall crime trends, look for this story on our website, WRTV.com, as well as the WRTV app. Now to the pandemic's impact on our state. New data shows that 764 more Hoosiers have tested positive for COVID-19. And that's a slight increase over Wednesday's numbers. A total of 102,243 people in our state have been diagnosed with coronavirus. The Department of Health also confirms 13 additional deaths. Now, since the pandemic began, 3,186 Hoosiers have died with the virus. 1,164,141 people in Indiana have been tested so far for COVID-19. 8.8% of those have tested positive. Data from the state also shows that about 40% of Indiana's ICU beds are still available. COVID-19 patients are using 10% of those beds, while non-COVID patients are using 50% of those beds. 81% of the state's ventilators are still available. Black, Latinx, and Native American communities, they continue to be disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. So now faith leaders from those communities, they're joining together in a new initiative. The goal is to get accurate and updated information about the virus and clinical trials into minority communities.
To disseminate information that translates what can be, in many instances, the complexities of this virus in a way that allows it to be understood throughout the community, irrespective of levels of education.
We are not here to recruit. We are here to educate, to ensure that whatever decision, whether leaders make and their parishioners make, and parishioners have their own networks. And so we are really looking at this each one teach one model.
And so put this into perspective, African Americans have historically had distrust in the healthcare system stemming from unethical research practices linked to the Tuskegee syphilis study that ended in 1972. There is varying interest and trust among minorities right now when it comes to the ongoing clinical trials. Today marks a solemn day in our nation's history. On September the 11th, 2001, terrorists, they hijacked 4 planes. 2 of them crashed into the World Trade Center towers in New York City, causing them, as you know, to collapse. Another crashed into the Pentagon, while a 4th went down in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The attacks claimed 2,983 lives. Former President George W. Bush declared the first Patriot Day just before September the 11th in 2002. Former President Barack Obama, he expanded the day in 2016 to include a National Day of Service and Remembrance. In New York City, a ceremony at Ground Zero will take place to mark the 19th milestone of the terrorist attacks. Officials note there will be some additional safety measures because of the pandemic. The biggest change is that this year there will be no live reading of the victims' names. Instead, organizers will play recordings of family members reading those names. Those in attendance are also expected to follow state and federal guidelines regarding social distancing. President Trump on the defense over his handling of the coronavirus pandemic during a rally in Michigan overnight. After the break, the latest from the Michigan Trail. And more destruction across the western United States as these wildfires, as you see there, continue to rage. Straight ahead, an update on the firefighting efforts. But first, let's check in on your forecast on this, Todd, I'm going to call it a fantastic Friday.
Oh, it's always a good day on Friday. I like the way you think there, Raphael, as we go throughout the day today. The rain showers are still off to our west. That's where they've been throughout most of this week. Eventually, some of those are going to start to sneak in here as we get into your weekend. We'll talk about not only your weekend forecast, but detailed today for you as well. Coming up when Good Morning Indiana continues right here on WRTV.
This morning in our Democracy 2020 coverage, President Trump back on the campaign trail, as you can see, insisting that he did not lie to the American people about the threat of COVID-19. And that's despite the fact that newly released audio tapes from interviews with Mr. Trump that he did with Bob Woodward, the president himself said he did downplay the virus. ABC's Faith Abube is in Washington with the latest on this developing story.
In Michigan,
they wanted me to come out and scream, people are dying.
President Donald Trump in front of a packed and mostly maskless crowd.
When Hitler was bombing London, Churchill, great leader, would oftentimes go to a roof in London and speak. And he always spoke with calmness. No, we did it just the right way.
Still trying to explain away his own words about not being frank with the American people over the deadly threat of COVID-19.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
The president using his rally Thursday night to try to shift focus from the crisis while ripping into famed reporter Bob Woodward, who Trump agreed to talk to in 18 different interviews for his book, Rage.
This whack job that wrote the book.
Joe Biden on CNN putting the attention back on Trump.
Think about it. Think about what he did not do. And it's almost criminal. And the virus is not his fault, but the deaths are his fault because he could have done something about it, Jake.
Trump's own former national security advisor, John Bolton, calling out the president for saying this in private about COVID-19.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
While telling the American people this.
It's a little like the regular flu that we have flu shots for.
The American people are not children, they're adults. And the way a leader reacts is you tell them the truth.
ABC's John Carl pressing Trump.
Why did you lie to the American people, and why should we trust what you have to say now?
That's a terrible question, and the phraseology, I didn't lie. What I said is we have to be calm.
And many have asked why Woodward waited so close to the election to release these bombshell tapes. Well, Woodward is defending himself. He says he wasn't sure where the president was getting this information from, and he wasn't sure whether he was telling the truth. Faith Abube, ABC News, Washington.
More than a dozen fire-related deaths have now been confirmed as major wildfires, they continue to rage across the West Coast. Take a look at these satellite images from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They show parts of California, Oregon, and Washington state blanketed with smoke from those infernos. Fire crews from other states are now on hand trying to get an upper hand on that situation. According to the National Interagency Fire Center, more than 4.3 million acres have been scorched from dozens of active fires. The August complex fire in Northern California has scorched more than 471,000 acres alone. CAL FIRE says it's the largest blaze in that state's history. And in Washington state, roughly 600,000 acres were burned this week, the most that the state has ever seen in a single year, except in 2015. And of course, Todd, looking at those images, simply devastating to see what's happening out west. Now let's turn to your local forecast where things are much better considering what we're seeing on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's a completely different air mass that's in place here. They've been dealing with very hot, dry, windy weather, and we've been warm. There's no doubt about that, but we've had our fair share of rain in northern locations. I know that's a different story down to the south, and including the metro area, we really haven't had a whole lot of rain. But this morning, as you walk out the door, there's kind of that damp feel kind of left over from yesterday, and the view from downtown to the north shows that with the low overcast sky, and it's not completely extending to the ground, so we don't have a lot of dense fog out there. It's more just reduced visibility a little bit, but this shouldn't really hamper you as of right now on the roadways. But we have seen the visibilities drop a little bit on the far eastern portion of central Indiana here, so I would highlight Muncie over towards Winchester down into the Richmond area. You have the potential for some reduced visibility here this morning. The rest of central Indiana, not all that bad, but I'll keep an eye on those numbers for you here throughout the course of the morning. 60s and 70s all across the area right now. 70 in Bloomington, 68's the current temperature in Muncie, 63 as you make your way up into the Tipton area. And you look off to the west, and it's still cooler to the west, but the temperatures are starting to moderate. We didn't really get into those real chilly winter-like temperatures that they did off to our west, but we're going to have temperatures today because of the cloud cover hold pretty steady in the 60s throughout the morning hours with mostly cloudy skies. Then we'll slowly climb through the 70s later on this afternoon, and then high temperatures today will eventually get into the upper 70s to right around 80 degrees with a little bit of sunshine working its way into the forecast later on today. You don't have to worry about any rain though in the forecast. That's the good news. Even though the skies may look a little threatening at times and it looks like it's going to rain, I think we should be okay throughout the day today, as most of these showers will stay off to our west for our Friday. Models want to indicate that the clouds are going to break apart, and I think they may have some success here in southern locations, but for the most part, I think we're going to hang on to these clouds just like we did yesterday, unfortunately. And then as we head into the evening hours, we will see the temperatures cool off down into the low 70s. And I'll highlight this. I I hated to type this morning. Sunset now before 8 o'clock, 7:59 tonight. For tomorrow, we get the sunshine back. With the sunshine comes the warmth. We're back up into the 80s. But tomorrow we also bring some scattered showers and storms into the forecast. The first half of the day is completely dry. Once we get into the evening hours, we're probably talking 4 or 5 o'clock onward, we'll start to bring in some scattered showers and storms through the area. Most of those storms are through. By the time we get to Sunday morning, decreasing clouds Sunday, then a beautiful stretch of weather next week. Low temperatures in the 50s, highs in the upper 70s to right around 80 degrees, and just the chance of some isolated storms back in the forecast, Raphael, Wednesday and Thursday.
Todd, let's check out traffic on this Friday morning. A live look now from the city's south side. This is I-65 at I-465. No accidents or delays on the interstates right now. As you can see, all is really good right now at 4:50 in the morning. Indiana investing millions of dollars to improve remote learning for grades K through 12. Coming up at 5, how IU is leading the efforts on this critical case. That and much more coming up right here on Good Morning Indiana. The Colts will play their first home game of 2020 this Sunday, and this weekend, the season begins with a trip to Jacksonville. WRTV's Brad Brown has a look at that, plus an important weekend on the IndyCar schedule.
As the NFL season kicks off on Thursday, the Colts continue their Week 1 grind and look ahead to a road trip for their opener. Without any preseason games to digest, this first test at Jacksonville will ideally answer a lot of questions about what this team will look like for 2020.
I had that nervous energy last night. I think it'll be a little bit of that all week long. I think it's game week. It's real. We're about to kick off in the first game. You didn't have the preseason games to even play a series with no consequence. It's here.
Indy's lost 6 straight Week 1 games. Clearly, it's a much different lineup that takes the field this time around, but the message is the same. A good start could set the pace for a very promising season.
We got to start with a 1-0. That's one thing that we really talk about is being 1-0. And going to Jacksonville, every time I went to Jacksonville, I lost. So it's definitely in the back of my mind. The defense, we talk about it 24/7 that we got to come in, we got to stop the run, we got to, make sure we control all passes and, get some takeaways.
The Colts follow up the road opener with a pair at home. The Vikings will be here next Sunday. Indy's schedule is way out of balance as far as the AFC South goes. They don't play another division opponent until Week 10. That's in mid-November. The Fever put together a solid effort on Thursday. 85-75 winners over New York. Snaps an 8-game losing streak for Indiana. The fourth quarter made the difference. Plus 10 for the Fever. It was tied through 3. Candace Dupree led the Indiana scoring with 22 points. Kelsey Mitchell pitched in 18. IndyCar is back in action this weekend. A pair of races on the road course at Mid-Ohio. It's an event that's been on and off the schedule a couple times. Fans will be back at the track. They're limiting to 6,000 tickets for each day. Saturday and Sunday races. This doubleheader will go a long way in deciding the IndyCar Points Championship. Scott Dixon enters the weekend with a 96-point lead over Joseph Newgarden. With the right results, Dixon could essentially wrap up the season championship. There are just 3 events scheduled after this weekend, 2 of them on the IMS road course. That's the first weekend of October, and the season ender scheduled for October 25th in St. Petersburg. And locally, a big weekend for USAC's National Sprint Car Series. They'll race on Friday night at Bloomington Speedway, an event rescheduled from earlier this year. Saturday night, it's Lincoln Park Speedway in Putnamville. They'll actually have a pair of A-main sprint features that night. One of those was rained out just a few weeks ago. Brady Bacon enters the weekend with a 4-point lead over Chris Windham for the national title. Brad Brown, WRTV Sports.
All right. Thank you, Brad. A lot of good sports to look forward to here this weekend. It's going to be a decent weekend ahead. Just some spotty storms Saturday evening, but most of the day should be dry. Most of the storms are out of here overnight Sunday morning, so Sunday's essentially going to be dry with temperatures in the 80s. Today, clouds hang tough, though, 78. And then a beautiful stretch of weather next week with comfortable overnight lows in the 50s and highs near 80 degrees and plenty of sunshine. The time now, 4:57. We're just getting started here on Good Morning Indiana. Stay with us. We're back in just a couple minutes.